recording back, you can hear what we're talking about. So I think I'm going to record on this computer as well as stream live, just in case. I did a live on Instagram the other day, and I was like banking on the fact that it was going to store on my feed. No, it was like a 45-minute live call with a time management coach, completely wiped. Well pissed off.
Oh no, that's
Uh,
ironic, isn't it? Didn't get
such an
that time
annoyance.
back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're just gonna have to go back and do another one.
Yeah.
Right. Okie dokie. Right. I think we are officially live. We're officially recording. Excellent. We've already got some people popping on. You are popular. You are popular. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining live. Thank you for watching replay. I am really, really stoked to have Relle here. We have got some hands showing up. We've got some faces on the live. This is excellent. This is excellent. So this is Relle. Her title is an absolute mouthful, so I don't want to butcher it. I don't want to upset you. So all I've got to say is we are going to be talking about healing our relationship with ourselves, including food and our body, with Relle's radical system. I don't want to butcher this, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Relle. Please, by all means, introduce yourself and kind of how you've gotten to this point so far.
Sure. Okay. Well, hi. I wish I could actually. I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to see people, and I can't. So that's.
Oh,
But
I'm
hello.
streaming live into the Facebook. Sorry, I probably should have told you.
um. Yeah. So I'm not going to take full credit for this. What we're going to talk about today. So what we're going to talk about is a modality of therapy. So it's an approach to therapy. So it's something that I've learned and that I use as part of my practice. And I find it really, really helpful, as you said, when it comes to thinking about healing your relationship with food, with anything that you struggle with, really, with any parts of yourself that you struggle with. So my, mouthful of a title is I'm an integrative counseling psychotherapist and supervisor, which basically means that I'm a counselor. So I do therapy with people, and I'm a supervisor. So I also supervise other therapists and help them to offer the best service to their clients. Um, so yeah, it's something, I mean, it's so much of a part of me, what I do. As you know,
Mm-hmm.
it is literally like my specialist subject. I just rave about it at every opportunity. I'm like that boring friend that goes on and on about theories and, like self-work and all of this all the time. So it's really nice to come on and get a chance to just chat about this particular theory, which holds a special place in my heart because you know, I've just seen some amazing transformations with this theory, and I include myself in that. It's something which you can use it just a little bit by just having a little bit of information. You can use that with yourself and things can begin to change. You can get to know it more and more, and I'll give some recommendations for books and resources and things, and get really complex with it, which is what I love. You can just apply it a little bit, or you can really get into it. It's one of those theories, one of the rare theories in therapy that you can use by yourself. So although it's great to get a therapist, someone who's trained and knows what they're doing with this theory, you can apply a lot of it by yourself. And when I was learning about this, I was applying a lot of it to myself, and I just found it such an easy way to break down some complex sort of ideas. So shall I go straight in and sort of introduce it a little bit and start to talk about this theory and how we might begin to understand it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super stoked to hear everything. Relle, by the way, is incredible. I've known her for a couple of years now, a few years. My goodness, time has gone fast. And I've been following Relle as well on social media and on Instagram, and your posts, your lives, your videos, they are so jam-packed. So these girls have got some exciting information ahead of them. So we've got all hellos and hellos in the live. So take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So please, I said to Bianca, interrupt me if something, if you want a bit more clarity on something, or if you want me to slow down, or just chat about it if you're curious, please interrupt me. And if anyone wants to ask any questions or is curious about anything as I'm going along, if you can see those comments, feel free to stop me and we'll address them, or you can ask any questions or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, everyone's watching in the Facebook Live. I am also monitoring as I'm talking with Relle. So please drop any questions in that in there, and I will appropriately interrupt.
Okay, great. So I should firstly say that, I'm just going to touch on some of the ideas from this theory. We're not going to go too complex with it today. I mean, I have a bunch of notes, kind of the way that my mind works, very chaotic. So my notes are very chaotic, just random notes. So I'm kind of freestyling here. So we'll see how much we go into it or not. But I think that just to give a rough overview will give enough for people to go away with and either research or just to begin to use it on themselves.
Mm.
I also said to Bianca just before this, maybe at the end we can do a little meditation, because the great thing about this theory is, and what makes it different to a lot of different theories, is that with something such as CBT, for example, that's a theory that a lot of people are familiar with when they go to therapy. It's you're working in your mind. You're just using your mind. You're thinking about things, and you're thinking about your thoughts, feelings, behaviors, but it's all through the mind. So a big part of this theory is that you're using your body. You're getting into your body. It's an embodied theory. And we can't really get a feel for that unless we get into our bodies as well. So at the end, I'll do just like literally a couple of minutes of meditation for you to get an experience of what it's actually like. So yeah, this is just going to be me chatting a little bit about it and hopefully giving you a bit of insight into where to begin.
Yeah.
So I'll introduce the theory a little. So the theory is called internal family systems, as IFS for short. It's a theory, it's a relatively new theory that's kind of taking the therapy world by storm at the moment, because it's evidence-based. There's a lot of research around it now. It's incredible in a lot of areas that a lot of theories have failed in, such as eating disorders. It's a really difficult sort of little part of therapy that not many people work with. But this theory was developed, with eating disorders in mind as the primary client. It was developed by someone called Richard C. Schwartz in the 90s, so it's quite early on. And it's all about, the very basic premise of it is that we are a collection of parts. So what I love about this theory as well is that it uses very simple language that we can all understand and that we're probably using anyway. It's just when we begin to understand it a bit better, we can use it a bit more intentionally. So Richard Schwartz was a family therapist that was working with a family. So we'd have the whole family in the room. And what we know, those of us who work with families know that when you're working with a family, they're a collection of parts. So each person is a part of the family. You may have somebody who is taking control of everything that goes on in that family. You may have somebody else who's like the helpless one who shouts out every now and again and everybody has to go to them. Or there's all these different parts of the family, and they all have relationships with one another. So it's really difficult to heal this whole family unit without first coming to each individual part and giving them what they need, perhaps unburdening them of some responsibility or some trauma that they have, and understanding the point of view of each individual part of this family. So what Richard discovered was that he could apply these same premises, and there are much more that comes with this, so I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible. Apply these same things to our inner family, which is why it's called internal family systems. So we all have an inner collection of parts. So each of our parts, and there are many, have their own beliefs, their own thoughts, their own behaviors, which is kind of a new thing when it comes to therapeutic approaches, that work with food and our relationship to food. Because quite often we're just seeing ourselves as one whole person. So we're trying to control our eating habits. We're trying to get on the diet, stay on the wagon, or whatever. You know, we're working with our adult self. But more often than not, the part of us that comes out at 10 o'clock at night and binges is actually not our adult self. It's a child part, it's a young part that at some point in our lives had to develop for a very good reason. So, part of this theory is separating and understanding our parts. And I can talk a bit more about that. Understanding that each part has a protective function. So every single part that we unearth, even if it feels terrible, like we might have a part that's an internal critic, or a part that binges, or a part that restricts us, whatever they're doing, it's because they've been burdened with something and because they're trying to protect us. So every part has a positive intention, even if the way it shows up doesn't feel so positive. Are you with me? Are you with me so far?
I was just you're reading my mind. I was just going to say, team, everyone who's watching this, just pop in the chat if you are with us and if this is making sense. Please carry on while everyone types in. Hopefully, yes. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free.
Okay, sure. Okay. So I can talk a little bit more.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Sorry.
Good, great. Okay. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about some of the aims of this theory then. So we know that we are a collection of parts. What next? Like, what do we do with that? So the aim of this theory, and there are different ways to do this, are to firstly get to know your parts a little bit. Because when we get to know our parts, we are not being our parts. So it's very different when you can develop what we call self energy. It's quite confusing actually that they call it self, but we're developing this self energy. So what that means is we're developing the capacity to have awareness of our parts. So rather than being blended, that's the language they use, with a part. So we're no longer like, oh my God, rummaging through the cupboards, blended with that part of us. We're sitting back into awareness and noticing that that part of us has an urge and that it wants to do this, but there's also another part of me that wants to do this. So part of the aim of this theory is to develop what we call self energy, and there's lots of different ways to do that. Self energy is characterized by, and I can never remember these all, but it's characterized by 8 C's, C words. So curiosity, calm, compassion, connectedness, creativity. There's a couple more, lost them.
But you're doing well so far.
Get the gist.
Yeah.
So part of this theory is trying to develop this self energy, this seat of awareness from which we can view our parts and get to know them a little better. So you might think, well, I don't feel those things. I'm not a calm person. I don't feel confident. I don't have all those things. But we are born with this self energy. We all have it. It might be that there are parts which are obstructing your view, and there are other things that are taking over. There are parts you're blended with, but we all have the capacity to feel calm, confident, all of these lovely qualities. It's just that there are things in the way. So it's developing our capacity for self energy. And self energy, actually, there's a nice analogy. It's full of analogies, this theory, because it's quite a lot to get to grips with, isn't it? But there's a nice analogy about you're in a family being like being on a bus, and you being yourself, like embodying this self energy. So you're sitting in your awareness, you're being conscious and compassionate, not judgmental with your parts, means that yourself, your adult self, so your compassionate, nurturing self, is driving the bus. And there may be little arguments in the bus between the parts, but you can give them a bit of attention and you can listen to what their needs are and meet those needs, and all will be fine if they trust that you're driving this bus. If you don't have that self energy, you've not yet developed it, you're not quite sure how to do that just yet, what's happening could be chaos on that bus. Like one part is grabbing the steering wheel, trying to drive, and then by the time they've got no energy, so another part just takes over, and there's this all this like chaos, and parts are just trying to become blended with you and trying to drive the bus, you know, trying to take your autonomy. And it
Mm-hmm.
feels like you've got no control over it. You're just, you know, you're just a passenger. You've got no
Mm-hmm.
control over what you're doing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whether that comes to binging or, you know, any of these like things around food.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And thoughts with yourself as well, sort of like the thoughts and perceptions of yourself. So some people might say, oh, I'm ugly, I'm unattractive. Does it apply to those things as well as the binging and overeating?
Absolutely. So any thought that you have, any belief that you have about yourself is a part, which actually I find so freeing because I think, oh, a part of me is like looking at the cellulite on my legs right now. Like, oh, I really feel for that part of me. She's, you know, she's a victim of what diet culture or gender bias or generational trauma. You know, there are all these different reasons why that part of me feels like they need to focus on that area of me and tell me these things about it. So any part that you're thinking, you think you're thinking it, it's a part of you that's thinking it. And by separating that, it just allows you to sit back into that seat of awareness and begin to drive that bus again so that you're no longer the part of you which is criticizing you. You are the part of you which is hopefully giving some love and compassion and some curiosity towards that part.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, they all come from parts. They all come from parts. Um, and I think what's great about this theory when it comes to food as well is that, you know, our emotional relationship with food, you know, emotional eating and things like that is relational. It's not behavioral. You know, we treat it so often as if it's a behavior that we need to train ourselves out of. Actually, there are reasons why we do it, and those are behavioral. They're about our unmet needs. They're about, you know, our human need for connection, for um, validation, for worth, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things that, so many reasons why those parts have developed that we can get to know a
Mm-hmm.
bit more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I like to think of food as just the only solution to kind of calm. Maybe this can be, I'm not too sure if you would apply it this way, like eating can be the solution to calm that part that we have found, and it was the best solution that we had, and we've kind of just latched onto that as a coping mechanism. Does that still apply?
Yes, well, you know, many of our parts they develop because of our unmet needs, or they develop because we have a need. We don't know how to do something. So, for example, as you just said, eating is nourishment. So, if we're not getting nourishment in other areas of our life, and the only way we can get that is through food, then of course we're gonna maybe overeat or get our nourishment from food because we're not getting it elsewhere. Or there are so many other functions, aren't there? There are so many other functions to food. When
Mm-hmm.
it comes to emotions, food can help us to dissociate. So if
Mm-hmm.
we eat really foods that are high in sugar and fat, that can help us to dissociate and get away from difficult emotions. So you can have a part which knows that, and it's giving you these sugar cravings and getting you to binge a little bit because it knows then you can check out of your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
There are parts which many people have parts which self-blame as a way to feel control over a situation. So when we can't process something properly, because we're relational beings, we need to process in relation to others, we can just blame ourselves as a way to feel control. And eating can be a self-punishment. It can be a way to, you know, blame ourselves. It can even be a way to put weight on so that we feel protected from the world, so that people can't get through this protective barrier that we've got, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so many, it's so individual to each person, but there are
Mm-hmm.
so many reasons why we have parts that use food.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and getting to know them, you know, it can be honestly life changing. I think an important thing to say about our parts is that our parts are stuck in the past. So our parts don't have our current understanding of the world. If you have a part that developed when you were 6 years old because you didn't get comfort in your household, and food gave you comfort, and there were scary things going on around you, maybe that part doesn't know that there are no longer scary things going on around you. That part only is stuck in the past and only knows its experience. So part of this theory is when you bring self energy to it, the parts begin to trust you. They begin to trust that there's a compassionate driver of the bus. There's a compassionate adult here. There's somebody who, without an agenda, is offering me, this space. And it's actually incredible and really strange what can happen in these sessions when you're having IFS therapy, because the parts can come to you and tell you things, give you new memories, or tell you things that you had no idea about. And you can then bring that part of you into the present and help it to find a new role, in your system.
I love this. This is all kind of like making sense. Like, obviously, I'm a coach, not a therapist, but a lot of the stuff that we've learned is kind of like a little bit like cherry picking some of the stuff that you're talking about. So I've kind of heard of the same sort of thing in many different forms, and very, very lightly, only just relatively touch the subject, but it definitely it makes sense, and it's good to know I'm working through with my clients everything that you would be working through too, just on a lighter level.
Yeah. And sometimes an easy thing to notice is, what two parts do I have that are in conflict with one another? And you can notice that by behavioral loops. So for instance, if you're restricting and controlling yourself a lot, and then come Friday you fall off the wagon and you start eating a load, that's because you've got a really restrictive part that's not taking into consideration the other parts, and then they have to just come up when they get an opportunity to do so. And then again, you can become addicted to that cycle of, okay, it's Monday, I'm starting again, I feel good, I'm in control. And a lot of people come to therapy like, I just need to get rid of this binging, I need to get rid of this thing that like when I'm out of control, I need to get rid of that. But actually, the reason that is there is because you're so tightly in control. It's like a child that's shouting when it gets opportunity to do so because it's so controlled the rest of the time. So, working with all the parts, not just the ones you like or don't like, all the parts, and finding out how they're taking over your system at different times. Even if it feels good to you, it might not be healthy.
Okay, so is there a way to oh, my headphones have just died, sorry. The sound might be a bit crappy, bear with 1 second.
Sounds okay to me.
Doing me dirty, bear with me 1 second.
It's okay, no worries.
Right, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So is there a way to kind of pinpoint the parts? Is there like a list that you would go through, or some typical behaviors to notice what ones need attention?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I was wondering whether to go into that or not, because you can go into that. So there's if you Google it, or there's loads of videos on YouTube. There's loads of stuff online, and I can send anyone a couple of sheets, by the way, if anybody wants a bit more information on it. I'm happy to send my worksheets and stuff. But yeah, there's a visual representation of it which tells you the different parts. So I won't go too far into it, but just quickly to give you a bit of an idea.
Yes, please.
There are 3 different types of parts. The first are called exiles. So you don't really work with those until you're quite far down the line, because they're quite hidden, as the name suggests. They're exiled. So they're parts of you that have experienced pain and fear and trauma, and your needs not being met. And so they're quite far down. We're not normally aware of them. They're usually, out of our awareness. And then the other 2 parts are called protector parts. And there are managers. So as the name suggests, managers are managing your life, managing your system. So they're preemptive. So they're stopping you from ever coming into awareness, these exiles that you've got. They're stopping you from feeling this old pain. And they can do that by over managing your life, keeping you really busy, What other things? Avoiding, not going to certain places, people pleasing, approval seeking, controlling, detached behaviors, rigid dieting, or having a really intense exercise regime. So, and these parts, if these parts are in control of your system, they can often lead to breakdowns or burnout, because they're really hard working parts.
Okay.
And the other protector part is called a firefighter. So if you think of the managers as trying to prevent you from feeling any big emotions, the firefighters come out when you're triggered. So when you're already feeling something. And in relation to food, that usually looks like binge eating. It can also be like medicating, drugs, anger, just things that crop up when you're feeling pain to distract. They're basically about distraction.
Okay.
And what can happen is you can have a manager part and a firefighter part that are really conflicted. So a manager is really in control, and then to the point where you burn out, and then the firefighter comes up and creates chaos in your life and does something you don't like. And so the manager has to come in again and be like, okay, we're reining it back, we're doing this again. And it can be a never-ending cycle, until you get to know these parts.
I think that's a perfect, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think
No.
that's a perfect example there of, I actually wrote a post the other day of people who just want to start again on Monday. And I have worked with some people who are adamant, like I'll give them action steps on a Wednesday, but they will not start until Monday. Like one-to-one coaching, like they're in deep in coaching and they're like, right, okay, this action step, I will not start until Monday. And this really explains it. I feel like if anyone's watching this and you're one of these people that really likes to just start afresh, and that maybe is that like is it like a pattern that someone might see quite often starting on that Monday because the manager is really taking control of that, and that's when they feel in control.
Yeah, and also, our brains and our bodies are wired for certainty and predictability. They don't want to work hard and do something different because that's hard. That's really difficult. So we can become addicted to these ongoing patterns that just goes on and on over and over again of what our parts are doing. Our parts roles, just as like we talked with the outer family, maybe the brother gets drunk on a Friday night and does something, and then the sister comes over and apologizes, and this family member does that. We're just addicted to the same patterns of behavior because it happens every time, and everybody knows their role will step in at some point. Predictable, we know it, it feels safe, even if it's not. So it's the same with our parts, that their relationship to one another becomes so entrenched over time that picking apart and sitting back into that seat of awareness can be hard, and it can also bring up feelings that we haven't processed. But down the line, it can be absolutely transformative. You can not recognize yourself when you're in this self energy most of the time,
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to push the conversation forward, but I know you've got loads of notes, so I don't want to push it forward if
No,
you've got.
no, go on. If there's any questions or if you want to if there's anything you want to know or you want to focus on,
Yeah,
do.
so we've got let's jump in the chat before we move forward then, shall we? What was the theory's title again? As Jessie is asking.
Yeah, so it's called internal family systems. So it's IFS for short.
Excellent.
If you're into reading, No Bad Parts is the first book, the first book that anyone can read, which gives a really good introduction to it. It's quite an easy read, I think. And if you get the Audible version, it gives you exercises, lots of meditations and exercises you can do throughout the book as well, which is really good.
Excellent. I'll be doing that. Thank you. So that's that question. Jessie, thank you. Sorry, I keep jumping.
Okay.
Katie, how do you figure it all out and deal with it? I think that would probably be great as a conversation next. So would you be happy to jump back to that?
Yeah, so how do you figure it all out? It's not easy because when we're so blended with our parts, how do we sit back and realize what's a part and what's not? Well,
Mhm.
it all is the answer. So it takes a while. It takes a while to get to know your parts. If you go online and look for IFS, you'll be able to see, well, I'm sure there's loads of worksheets and things, and I've got one I can send, but
Mhm.
there's
Katie says she loves worksheets, so I think we'll send it
okay.
back to Katie.
Yeah, oh, well, that'd be a part. There's a part of you that loves worksheets. That is. So yeah, you can go through, and on my worksheet, there's a few questions that you can ask yourself, which helps you to just get started because it's hard to get started, isn't it? Just about your managers and which ones are showing up in your life right now and how might that look. And we'll do a little meditation, so you'll get a little idea of what it's like to go, because you get what happens is, which is kind of weird, but it works. You get a direct relationship with each part. So you're not just thinking about, oh yeah, maybe there's a part that's doing this or that. You're having a direct relationship with it. So you're kind of like reparenting it. You have a relationship from this self, so calm, curious, compassionate. You then make space for your parts and they communicate with you. They give you stuff that you might not even know. You're not thinking it up, it just comes to you. And you then can trust them, and each other to work with whatever needs to happen. It's quite a natural process. I know it
Mhm.
sounds a bit odd.
No, I totally know what you mean because when I started health coaching, we were taught around the concept of woundology. Have you heard of wound? Yeah, so that's what I mean by it's starting to kind of sound a little bit familiar. And when I first learned about it, to be honest with you, I was like, that sounds so spiritual. It sounds all woo-woo. Like I kind of don't believe it, but I'll carry on. And I am not really a spiritual person or anything like that. But the more I practiced it, and then the more I practiced it with my clients, the more I understood that the science behind it. Um, and the more I've, grown as a coach and the more I'm doing work on myself as well, the more I understand the scientific reasoning behind it, the manifestation, the storage in our body, and the fact that we do have that subconscious that, necessarily know and talk to that part that's there all the time. So you don't really know until you go and do the exercise. And then you're really, really surprised with what can and what will come up as well. So just a little side note to say, and I like to mention that, especially if anyone's like, oh no, this is getting a bit too woo-woo for me, this works. Basically, all I wanted to say is this works.
It's evidence-based psychotherapy. This is one of the most transformative theories that we've had in recent times. And we know, in our school of work, we know that there's no separation between the mind and body. That's not a thing. We treat it as if it's completely separate, but it's not. Our body is communicating with us all the time. Our nervous system, all of it is being instructed by what we think and how we feel. So these things are interconnected. And one easy way to sort of get a bit more familiar with what's going on for you is just to notice in your body what's happening. Like most of us will have this feeling, maybe if we're triggered or something comes up and we're like, you might get a feeling in your throat and you can feel that it's coming up. So you can just stay with it, like, and notice, what does it feel like when you don't have to use the language of emotions. Just, is it a pressure? Is it rising? Is it falling? Is there a resistance to it? Can you soften that resistance? You can just start to notice your body in a much different way, because the functions that your parts have, they're all in your body. And a lot of the time, they're trying to hold in energy, they're trying to hold in like emotions or whatever it is. So you can just notice yourself in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Debbie said, with BSc in psychology, I've never heard about this theory. I would love to learn a lot more about this. Where can I go to learn more deeply on this subject as it really relates to me? I think she mentioned that. I think she sent that after you mentioned about the book, and the theory.
Yeah,
Debbie,
yeah,
get
there are
in touch if you need more.
Yeah, and there are loads of books on it, loads. There's a really good one I'm reading at the moment, actually, about embodied IFS. And there's a couple of people. There's a lady who Celia Clark online, who works specifically with food and IFS. She does lots of support groups and things, but just her online stuff is good. There's an Instagram page, The Ordinary Sacred, which she just talks about parts, and there's little illustrations and stuff, which are quite fun and easy to understand. Yeah, no bad parts, like I said. There's loads of different ways you can use this when it comes to anything, and it's particularly good if you're in a relationship with someone who's also willing to learn a little bit about this. There's a book called You Are the One You've Been Waiting For, which is all about this in relation to relationships. And it's so great, when you can start to learn that like a part of me is angry with a part of you. It's very different to like, it's very different to something being the entirety of you. So
Yeah.
yeah, there are loads of good YouTube videos as well. There are loads of like, courses and things you can do on YouTube. You can just follow along. They're quite simple.
Excellent. Well, we're here to listen to what you've got. So I want to go back with what Katie's question. How do you figure it all out? So we've you mentioned about the worksheets, you mentioned about noticing what parts are up. Then how do you deal with it? How do we heal our relationship with ourselves? Is it through just the meditation? Is it necessary to go through therapy as well? I'll let you take over.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's usually necessary to have therapy.
Mm,
Although you can get to a certain point, you can get to a certain point, you don't have to go to therapy to see some real change. Um, Yeah, I think you'll see in the meditation kind of an example of how you can offer yourself this self energy, because it really is as simple as offering yourself this awareness. And
mhm,
then what comes up, you can then work with it and go a step further. So hopefully something will come up for you in this meditation we're going to do, and you can be like, okay, that's where I'm going to go. That's what I'm going to work on next. And then next time you do it, you'll get a bit more information, and you can notice that part in your life, and you can bring your awareness to it so that it's not driving the bus, it's not got full control.
mhm.
There's a parent there to guide it. So yeah, it's not a simple answer, unfortunately, but getting to know your parts just changes the whole family, changes the whole system inside of you, and changes your feelings, your behaviors, your actions, everything. uh,
Mhm,
so
mhm.
yeah, just offering yourself this awareness in a different way is a place to start. Is a place to
Okay.
start.
Excellent. I love that. So, I mean, ultimately, the title of this was Healing Our Relationship with Ourself, including food and our body. So, taking this practice, taking this theory, and really bringing compassion and awareness, that kind of like the two main words that I'm pulling out from this conversation, compassion and awareness to each part, understand what is trying to be said, like which part is trying to speak out to you, bring the compassion, bring the awareness, and then start to heal those parts. Would that be like a really brief description of what we've described so far?
Yeah, getting to know the protective function of your parts,
Mhm,
and they will only let you know when they believe and trust that you are there, that you are consistently offering this compassionate attention. So if that's in the form of regular meditation or journaling, or just an inner attention that you're doing on a regular basis. We need to do this on a regular basis, at least at first, for our parts to trust that we're here, that they don't need to do these things anymore. So yeah, getting to understand the function of your parts and unburdening them. A big part of this theory is about unburdening the parts. And that happens by listening to them, building trust with them over time, in consulting them if you have a decision in your life, rather than thinking, because we can get stuck like, oh my God, a part of me wants to do this, but part of me wants to do that. Like we use that language anyway, don't we? Like, I'm going to this party, but like part of me just wants to stay in because I felt fat and gross. And a part of me is like, this is going to happen. So rather than just trying to settle on something and find certainty and to find which part you're going to believe and act on, speaking for your parts. So part of what we say a lot of the time is that instead of speaking from a part, so I'm feeling this, I'm doing this, whatever, we speak for it. So there's a part of me that would like this and that, and I can give it compassion. I can understand where that's come from. I can see how that's a protective function. On the other hand, there's another part of me which wants this. So you're validating and just changing your relationship with these parts so they no longer have to grab you and blend with you and control you. They can actually, they can feel heard, and you can be a bit more autonomous in your decision making.
Okay. I have a question which might either like it might baffle you or it might not even make sense. But when
Okay.
people say like is it in your head or your heart? Are they different parts? Is like one usually the manager and one usually the firefighter? Like where does that kind of fit into this?
Yeah. The thing is, everybody's system is different. Everybody's system's very different. Usually all of us have some thinking parts and they're in our head. So when you say, oh, I'm really in my head about this, that's because your thinking parts are blended. They're taking over what's going on. A lot of the language that people naturally use, they use it for a reason. Like, there's
Trust your gut.
weight on my back, or if there's a lump in your throat, it's normally about there's a part of you that is restricted in what they can say. They're
Mhm,
censored somewhere.
mhm.
So yeah, your parts can be in all different parts of the body. There are, I guess, some trends maybe, but yeah, it's unique to each individual, where parts are. Um, yeah, and it can give you just a fuller experience of your body, because I don't know about you, but certainly for me, before I had, lots of therapy, when I was training, I was kind of like, we used to learn about people being just a lollipop stick, like everything's happening up here and there's nothing down there. You know, I remember my therapist often saying, so how does that feel in your blah, blah, blah? And I was thinking, who's this like woo woo woman? Like, I don't do that. But,
Yeah.
you really can get just such a different relationship by listening to your body, and your parts are in your body and they will show you that, when you take the time to listen.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's amazing.
Hmm. Wow,
Um,
this is brilliant, and this is exactly why I said to every single member in the group, or as many as I could, please come along, because even if you feel like you don't necessarily have a bad relationship with food or even your body or both, like you said, this can be applied to so many different ways to heal ourselves. Yeah, in many different ways and parts of our lives.
Yeah. And maybe it would be helpful to give, because I was thinking to myself before, gosh, I have to hold confidentiality for so many clients. So I'm always really, I don't want to be vague, or I don't want to speak about other people, but maybe I can talk about my own parts around food,
Hmm?
just to give some examples of like
Yeah.
what you can find out when you work in this way with yourself.
If that's okay with you, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I have a lot of parts that have had issues around food, a lot of parts that I've worked with. And even now, I notice them come up now and again. I have a relationship with them. Now they might pull me this way or that, but I can practice what I've learned. But what I learned was some really, really amazing things. So I learned that, I learned sort of what I think most of us as women have, that I have parts that are conditioned to see thinness as worthiness, so they were having a big impact over what I was eating or how I showed up or thought about myself.
Hmm.
Um, I had parts that, because growing up I was in quite an unpredictable environment. I had to kind of manage the environment, so my needs would be met kind of in secret by myself. So it was anyone else by myself that I could think about myself. So then I developed a part that would, like, if there was nobody else in the house or nobody else around, I would eat. And I'm talking about like in recent years, like my boyfriend, I would go to his house and he'd go out to the shops or something, and I'd quickly go to the cupboards and see what I could eat. And I was like, why am I doing this? It's ridiculous. Like, I'm a healthy person, very conscious. I'm not anxious. I've done a lot of work on myself. I feel great. But I realized when I did some inner work, a part came to me and was like, yeah, your needs have been a secret. And, you have this feeling of secrecy. And that's what it was. So that was a really great thing that came to me that I could work with. Also scarcity. I think a lot of us have parts that have a feeling of scarcity. It's like, take it while it's there, because it's not always going to be there, which I've had in a lot of different ways, you know, if it comes to work or food or whatever. So that's the part that I've had to deal with. And even like, you know, even I actually have Crohn's disease. So Crohn's is an autoimmune disease, which I didn't realize I had until later in life. And I was in and out of hospital a little bit until I sort of got a handle on it. But there's a big link with autoimmune diseases and trauma because, well, there are many reasons. That's a whole nother subject. But what I realized, or what I found out actually, when I went inside and I did some real deep work with my parts with the help of a therapist, an IFS therapist, was that actually my parts were sometimes I got memories that I hadn't had before about when I was younger, when I tried to make myself ill so that somebody would give me some attention and care about me. And this came back to me, these memories that I had no idea about came back to me in parts work. And my parts were saying, this is what's happening. You know, you're getting to the point where you're not looking after yourself. And it's like almost like a cry for help that your body is doing something because you haven't advocated for yourself. You know, you haven't done it. And I was like, wow, that I would never have made that leap. You know, I would never have got to that. But it was something that came to me while I was doing parts work. I didn't think it up, or I wasn't even thinking about that. It was something else. And I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. And then I could work with that part of myself, you know. So that's just an example of a few parts around food. But, you know, there are so many parts and so many things to deal with. And you can literally go through, unburden them and heal them one by one. And it's so freeing, you know, and you get to learn so much about yourself along the way.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Just a new question come through before we move forward from Jessie. Has that discovery made any impact on the physical presentation? I can't read clearly. Physical presentation of your Crohn's?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. But I see this in my clients, you know, all the time. I see them, you know, it looks as though they've healed from their diseases, you know, and that's a whole other subject as well. You know, if you break down disease, it's dis-ease in the body. So, you know, what's happening
I've never thought about that.
Yeah, what's happening in the body, you know, if your nervous system's working really hard and you sense danger all the time, of course, you know, your body's going to be fighting itself because it can't outwardly fight anyone else. So yeah, there are so many links to health and trauma. Again, the mind and body, it's kind of an illusion that these things are completely separate. They are not. And we know this in our field. And in the medical field, it just hasn't come into the medical model yet, unfortunately. But the research is all there.
There's not for it, but that's a different conversation for later.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all know how I get when it comes to medication. We all know. Excellent. Okay, so would you be willing to share this meditation with us all and show us how we can approach our parts? So just to clarify, the meditation is going to help us pinpoint what those parts are, where they are.
So I thought, you know, it's quite hard to do with a group of people when you're not specifically working with somebody's system. So
yeah,
what I do is just use it as an opportunity to get to know one of our parts. Whatever comes up for you is valid. So I'll frame it as we're getting to know a particular part. But if that's not what comes up for you, if something else comes up, it's also valid. It's also a part to get to know. So often when we're working with this, we go towards one part to try and look for it, but that might not be what presents itself to us. So if it's something else, that's totally fine. And that also gives you something else to go away and think about as well. So yeah, it's just a short meditation in order to try and embody this self energy that I talked about, and just to give your inner family a bit of space and a bit of an opportunity to communicate with you and see what comes up, really.
Amazing. I love it. I'm gonna have to sit down for this though.
Yeah. Drink.
I have to sit down, and I probably need to relocate my laptop, otherwise you're gonna have to just look at my wardrobe. One
Well,
of
if
the,
you want, if
there
you
we go.
want,
I'll angle it. There we
okay, okay.
Sun
So
is in
yeah,
my
if you get comfortable wherever you are sitting, or even lie down if you want to, whatever feels, you know, natural to you. So we'll start by just, if it feels comfortable to you, just closing your eyes gently. And we'll just get into the body a little bit first. So we'll just take a couple of deep breaths together. So big deep breath all the way in. And hold at the top for a couple of seconds if you can. And then all the way out again. Just do a couple more breaths like this. Okay. So what we're doing now, as we breathe, just continuing to take some nice deep breaths. We're just going to bring our attention inwards to whatever is happening inside our body. So there might be thoughts that come up or things that distract you in your environment around you. But if you can just give yourself permission, just for a few moments, just to have a bit of inward attention as best you can. Okay. So you can let yourself know that there's nowhere else you need to be in this moment, no agenda, nothing you need to do other than just creating this space and this inner attention. So you might even notice what your initial thoughts are about this exercise. So maybe you're a bit dubious about it, or makes you feel a bit anxious. Whatever those thoughts or feelings are, if you can just be a bit curious with them. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try to get to know a part of us that is critical with us. So it might be a part that's your inner critic, or perhaps it's a bit critical of your body or your diet, something else around food. And we're just looking inwards and focusing inside. And I wonder if we can find where in the body we can feel this critical part. So you might like to think about last time this part showed up for you and what it felt like. You can notice any sensations or emotions or any thoughts you're having right now. And perhaps you can notice how you feel towards it. How do you feel towards this critical part of you? Is it possible to find some curiosity for this part? If you're feeling anything other than curiosity, then it's another part. And if we can just ask it to relax back, just for a few moments while we get to know this critical part. And if that part can relax, we can just give some space to this critical part and ask any other parts that come up and are in the way just to trust us for a few moments to be with this critical part. Now, you can just ask this critical part, is there anything that it wants you to know? So think about why this part is being so critical. And we're not thinking up the answer, just creating a space and waiting, seeing if it gives us an answer. What does it want you to know about why it's critical? You could ask it, what would happen if it didn't do this? If it didn't do this role, if it wasn't critical? Well, what's the fear that would happen? Perhaps we can acknowledge that this protective part of you has been working really hard. And I wonder how it feels if we can offer it a bit of gratitude and let it know that we can see how hard it's been working for us. We might even ask it how long it's been there. How long has it been doing this job for? Just remembering to be curious with anything that's there. So whatever comes up for you, it's all valid, it's all important. Okay. So if you can, let's just offer some gratitude, some thanks to any parts that have made themselves known to you, any thoughts, sensations, any emotions, anything that's communicated with you. Let's just thank it that it could come to our attention and let it know that maybe we'll come back, that we'll give it this loving attention again. And when you're ready, center yourself in the room again. Perhaps open your eyes and just have a little look around. Have a little yawn or a stretch if you need to. And coming back. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stand up so I'm not blinded.
How are you feeling?
Well, thank you, Relle. Please, if anyone has anything to share in the comments, drop that in.
Yeah, if anybody got a bit of information from their parts or something came up to them, I'd love to know about it.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I didn't think there was going to be anything else necessarily, anything that would come up. Yeah, I didn't think really necessarily anything would come up, and then something did, which is really interesting. And it's definitely something that I would like to tackle again and see if that same thing would come up. I've been wanting to change my nighttime meditation up, so I will be listening to your voice every single night. I'll be watching this back.
Yeah, there are loads of meditations, a little bit like that you can get on YouTube or whatever. Richard Swartz, who invented the theory, he does a lot of them himself, and they're quite nice. So yeah, it's a good practice to get into. And yeah, it's nice that some things can come up and surprise you and get a bit more information about what's going on.
Absolutely. No one's sharing in the comments yet, so maybe we'll hear might hear privately.
Yeah, it's quite a vulnerable thing to share, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, okay. Katie shared. Oh no, we got some. So Katie said that was really, really uncomfortable for me. It felt like I had rocks inside me. My mind wanted to pull away. I actually had two other parts pop up in response to my critical part too. It felt good to thank those parts.
Yeah. Okay. So there's some stuff that you're holding, and some parts that you could do some work with. But yeah, the thing about this theory is sometimes what will happen when we go inside for the first time, we'll notice some stuff that might feel heavy or deep or dark that's like in the background. And then there'll be some parts on the surface that you can work with. So we're never really going directly to the deep, dark stuff because that will come in time. We're just working with the outer layers first until the whole system feels safe for us to go there. So yeah, it can be really uncomfortable to give yourself that space, but it gets better over time. So well done for
I
trying.
think that's part of your body as well. That's part of your nervous system saying, hey, look, this is something that we've been holding on tight for. Like, I'm not used to addressing this. Would I be right in saying that part of that, like the resistance there is your nervous system almost saying, hey, hang on a second. We don't deal with this shit, you know?
Exactly. I mean, you have to build up trust. You have to build up trust, and it takes time. If your system has learnt for, I don't know, 30 or 40, 50 years that it works this way, and you don't look at that stuff, it takes a little bit of time to start to look at it and get to know it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And Katie said, by the way, that was a positive comment. The discomfort was needed.
yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a part of you that wants to let me know that you're not being negative about it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, Katie's actually one of my clients, so I'll definitely probably get an earful on our next call. So we got Jessie. It was interesting to see the why of what brings that critical self up, so that she's an ally instead of an enemy.
Yes, absolutely. All your parts are your allies, and the more safe that they feel, the more held and listened to they feel, the less they'll, have to do the jobs in the way that they think is the only way to do them right now because you're not listening. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for most critical parts, it's really about belonging and not being rejected or abandoned, which is at the very core of our survival needs. So yeah, those are parts that can feel really horrible, but are actually really looking after you.
Really healing, really healing. Right, well, I'm going to wrap up there, if that's okay with you, my lovely. This has been invaluable, absolutely incredible. I thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us all. This is just absolutely fantastic. I feel that everyone and anyone can benefit from your work, so I appreciate you. Please, can you let us know if there's somewhere that we can contact you, like your Instagram, anything that you do?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Honestly, I just love talking about this stuff, and it's so nice to frame it in a different way. We're talking about food here. I talk about it in lots of different areas of our lives. So it's nice to bring a fresh approach. So yeah, it's been great. Thank you for sharing with me. I'm Elle Empowers on Instagram. So you can follow me on Instagram. Really, it's just me. I just post when I'm inspired. It's not like overly professional, but I do post a lot about therapeutic ideas and stuff. So yeah.
That ELLE
ELLE
Powers.
Empowers, I think it is. And lempowers.info is my website. So I often put things on there. If I'm doing talks or whatever, or if you fancy having some sessions with me, you can have a look on the website as well.
Amazing, amazing. Well, if you can send those over to me, I'll drop those in the chat. I think I've done Instagram, but we'll see. Just really quickly, Debbie said it made me feel very nauseous at the end. So is that something that maybe her parts are saying, hey, this probably needs to be addressed, or there's me jumping and offering a solution? You're the therapist.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm getting too involved.
I mean, that's another thing. We might look for an instant solution, but maybe that's a part of you that needs you to feel that. Maybe that's part of its communication. So there may be a time in your life where you had nausea, or where there was a particular smell or something was going on for you that was quite nauseous. So it could all be part of the story of one of your parts. So just treat yourself with some care, have a glass of water, maybe a walk, come back to your environment here to let your parts know that you're in the here and now and not back there. So yeah, it's all a communication. Whatever it is you're feeling, there's something in that. So just having a little think about it, but also bring yourself back to the here and now. Do something that brings you joy or calms you. So yeah.
And then get on those worksheets.
Yes, yeah.
Katie, can you put your IG, other links in the comments? I'll do that after the call. Okay, yeah, my Instagram link doesn't work, so we'll have to drop that
And maybe I gave it to you wrong. It might be me.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you so much, my lovely. I'm gonna stop the recording, stop the live, and hopefully we'll be able to have a chat. Thank you so much for coming on. We've got loads of thank yous as well coming through, so appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet everyone.